Okay, hopefully it's audible. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, in honor of the original unconditional moment that all moments have arisen from and will return to, in the presence of the system admin of this existential simulation, and in the presence of the world host of this that is beyond this world room. Moving further ahead from divine formality, I would like to speak sorry to continue. I intend to speak about what I have considered to be the most fascinating and advanced view that I have accessed as a member of the human species. There is certain facts that a person comes to terms with in their life. We may have this impression that human beings are emotional and irrational and reactive, and perhaps not the full human biological process even is in full conscious awareness and responsibility or control. I have found it interesting to be able to drink a cappuccino and tell you, other members of the human species, that we have stalled on earlier problems, and the moment we wake up from those distraction problems to the main problems of reality, there arises a completely new excitement. There comes a completely new excitement for what reality actually is. And I don't know, I am someone who, if the viewers want to know the reasoning why I even give these talks, it's a matter of first considering what I know, then considering what the species knows, and then asking myself, what is it that I know that the species doesn't know? What is it that the species knows that I don't know? What is it that me and the species both don't know? And through this method, how can I tell you that the tasks for humanity here in this world is a very interesting one. At some point, it's like me being just in the archetype of a podcaster, you know? At some point in giving these talks, I noticed that we have been looking for our own life. We have been looking for life our whole life. And there's a part of us that is not convinced that reality is ultimately true. I shouldn't say ultimately, but reality currently isn't true. That means if you think of it this way, if you go based on truth first, reality is not going to make sense. But if you go based on simulation first, then it starts making sense. And that's where it gets interesting. That means we think that life, its meaning is specific to us. Most people think their life has meaning. You know, they're like, I've lived a life, man. Or I don't know, like when people are getting married, they're like, okay, what kind of life has that person lived? Right? They're all fascinated by this. But what about the mystery of how life is even being received? What is it at all? And could it be that we, as the members of the human species, cast the story over our eyes too soon? Or cast the story over our hearts too soon? It is all about the responsibility of the human, of all human beings for their species. Like, when will that day come? What's up, guys? Welcome to the chat. Feel free to respectfully share your antithesis, or, I don't know, further views on my thesis, on the thesi, I don't know how to say it, like, on what I share. Ultimately, what's going on is you're witnessing a human being that is exchanging the value of his time and his energy, pretty much, to express this. Now, the significance I find, you know, when I was younger, I came across this sentence that revolutionized my way of thinking, and it was an advice for writers, really. Then they were like, what kind of book should I write? And the answer was, write the book that you want to read. Write the book that will fascinate you. And so I started wondering about, okay, in what ways, when I wake up, like when I log into the day, like just like an MMO, when I log into the morning, right, I enter the conscious waking state. And then there is an opportunity for an unknown presence of a moment of being to notice different elements. Right now, really, I would say my soul is closer to the force that is sequencing these words. It's as if what the viewers don't know, it's like, yo, man, are there interdimensional translators? Like, yo, that's a job. It's like, it's not one that pays like that. The world is right now based on emotions. Think of it this way. Like, if let me say something hilarious. Imagine, okay, people are like, yo, man, who gave you the right to be a superhero? I'll be like, okay, you don't want me to talk as a superhero? Then the only option is left to talk from the perspective of the supervillain. And do you know what that would mean? It would mean that if a person communicates for the intention, and their intention at their core is a constructive force, right? To go into the supervillain archetype means to become conscious of the destructive. Everything that has been created, it is easier to destroy. If you pay attention to this reality, people get to know each other for years, right? But in one moment, it can be destroyed. How fascinating is that? Like, human beings, it's honestly like, let me tell you what human life in 2026 is. I think everybody would agree. Do you know? It's a performance. Am I wrong? It's a performance. From the moment we wake up, the performance starts in front of yourself, which is its own mystery. Okay? And then the performance extends beyond and further into the outer realms. Welcome, everyone, in the chat. Today's lecture is actually a fascinating one. Why? Because after some point, there isn't much to talk about. There needs to be new actions for new archetypes, and then new discussions can happen. Let me tell you guys, like, there is narratives way more important than any narrative a human being forges for themselves. There's stuff going on that is part of more the unknown presence of reality rather than something that's only comprehensible to a known personality for like what 16 hours a day. And it's like the scientist, like, the organism on the planet's like, give me proof, bro. And the person's like, excuse me, you want proof? Well, here it will take in the situation. Do you know? If the whole cosmos was like the oceans of the earth, we've just explored one glass of this vastness. So everything that we assume, even visibly, physically, that is true, is like a flashlight on like one part of a forest that is endless. And so the true position of mankind is in the mysterious. We are not entities that are designed just to adapt to the conditional. The soul of man was in some sense it instantaneously forged by the command of an unconditional being. That means how do I explain it? There's technically no orphans in reality. There is no orphaned souls. There's technically no lost souls. Souls are lost because they are forgetting what to look at. They're forgetting what is the true value. Ultimately, human beings are pulled towards what is important to them. But my whole life of trying to wonder about how the human psyche is happening, I realize no way. It is happening in a sort of sectorized way. That means right now you might not this might not be something common to say to people in 2026, but I'm giving this talk, sure, from one angle in the outer realms on Earth. From another angle, I am not just me as my body and my form and every idea I've ever had. I am a state of being. Now, I don't know how we can explain this to everybody, that in the same moment that you're being a specific aspect, you're identifying with one part of your moment, your whole moment is present. Like, what sort of enlightenment do you seek? Just notice what the light is showing you. It is found in every moment that you're present. There was a part of, I'm that person who, I think it's hilarious. Like, I've talked a lot about metaphysics, but what the way I've talked about it is like, guys, there's no need to see a face into the invisible. We must acknowledge that if it's like, how do I say it? I feel like a general, like giving these talks. I'm not even joking. Like, I have this feeling I'm like this general and this army that's been waiting to, like, they've sharpened their weapons and they're waiting to fight. Like, and it's like I've come to this massive 8.1 billion army, and I'm like, guys, you're not gonna believe it. The wars are internal now. We're not just living to survive. We're living for the psychological freedom. That means there's a force greater than the body, and there's a force greater than the activity of the mind. And there's a force that is just an event in the world, and it is the raw honor that the true mythology of man was the divine presence of all existence. It was that realization. Human beings awakened. They saw their limitations. They saw comrades fall in the battlefield. They wondered why they're still here. And the answer is clear. For if any soul in anywhere, like, what I have in common with, imagine there's a planet with humanoid beings on it in the Andromeda galaxy, like our neighboring galaxy. Okay, like there's I don't know, like a parallel version of Earth there. Do you know? It wouldn't matter if I was born there or on Earth. Inevitably, in any existential condition, there comes the realization that existence is being instantaneously experienced. So if you think of it this way, it's like two sides of a coin. It's existence one side, on the other side experience. Okay, now keep these words ambiguous. I'm going to explain it, right? So it's as if from one perspective, from one side of the coin, everything is being is there's an equal sign between the word being and the word existence. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's an equal sign with the word being and experience. So what does that mean? In the same moment, yes, you are being a physical, like biological organism, but I'm telling you, you're also experiencing existence as much as you're existing as an experience. That means, think of the most simplest way. If they were like, yo man, how would you explain this to kids? You know, if Einstein pinned me down, simpler, simpler. And was like, all right, you got to say it that way intellectually. I mean, he would in some sense say, I would say to him, guys, think of it this way. Think of it that life is an exploration game. It's one of those games that you got to go explore the map, explore the dimensions. Okay. And I'm saying, you're listening to a player in this game that is telling you beyond all the observable, even human constructed quests, beyond the secrets of man and the secrets of the natural world, the secrets of the stars are staring at us. Hello? You know, when I was like driving to give this talk earlier today, I thought like I should give a talk on the three modes. I think there's three modes, like human beings. Imagine your everything, like whatever you are. It's like settings. Like you know how like a computer screen has settings, like different devices have settings, right? So it's like imagine the human being has three modes, three presets, presettings. Okay, that means there's three, not the presetting, like it's, okay, I don't know how to say it, like there's three ways that you can live on this earth. Technically there's four, but the four is not on earth. So there's three ways you can live on earth. Okay? And people are gonna be like, I think most people can guess. What's interesting is as I'm saying this, I'm envisioning myself writing it on the whiteboard. I honestly feel like I should start doing that. Call it Mr.Within's, you know, whiteboard community. Anyways, where I was going with this was to say that ultimately it wouldn't matter where I would exist, the mysteries of experience stand. That means it doesn't matter if there was a version of me in the Andromeda galaxy right now, like a doppelganger version that's like just wondering about it, would inevitably, I don't even, I'll say it differently. Imagine like life was a video game and you could suddenly respawn. Okay, this is more yogic. I'm not a yogi. I believe there's a system admin beyond the world, and the purpose of the reality is to notice the system admin. That's my view, personally. But there are those who believe in reincarnation and all that. So imagine like life was a video game and the person's like, wait a minute, I could respawn as like this kind of, like a child born in Japan. I could respawn as a child born in America. I could respawn as a child like born in Africa, do you know? So I'm saying that ultimately, when you wonder about the depths of the human psyche, you realize like you could have been born anywhere, but what distinguishes you? And I'm telling you, you know how they say, yo man, life is the journey. Like it's like, what are you doing? Like only waiting to enjoy the journey, like enjoy the result of the journey. It's like Alan Watts said it. Yeah, he said like, yo, man, you don't listen to a symphony just to hear the ending notes. Similarly, when you climb a mountain, for example, you're not like, if you're only enjoying with the peak, then you're a fool because you're missing out on all the moments that led there. To be honest, it's really every person is tunneling through a sort of staircase of experiences, you know. Ultimately, human beings seek purpose. Purpose is the main point, I think. I'm trying to say that in 12,500 days of logging in and out of this simulation, I have to some degree understood the existential simulation's reasoning. And I started like a very younger age, like wondering about the experiential nature of reality. What am I? What is even being? And little did I know the depth of the questions that were arising in my mind had also translations in philosophy. It was as if I had noticed the limits of my epistemic value system, and I was like, okay, this is me accessing meaning only based on like what I've known, but how many other ways and hidden angles are there to reality? At some point, your soul seeks the hidden angles. What does it mean to be human? That means is a person that's just born, does that, if they are born as a biological human, is that enough for them to be human? It's like we're witnessing the evolution of a biological body simultaneously with the evolution of a mind that can access multiple probabilities of what may happen at the same time. The advancement of the human species must first begin from the realization of how it is equipped in the moment. Like, honestly, think of it this way. People are like, yo, man, if we were soldiers in an army, how is the general thinking? And let me tell you what the general is thinking. The general is legit the embodiment of the mind of the unit. Okay, and the mind lives ahead. That means the value of moments is not just like, okay, in this moment I experienced there was a value, then I went to the next moment, there's another value. No, no, no. For the general's mind, it is a matter of a purpose set. So the best explanation of this is like strategy. This is a really good sentence for you guys to remember. Strategy is how you win the war. Tactics is how you win every battle. And the essence of strategy is that one has seen a vision, a probability, and it is about all the steps that take it there. Guys, I'm audible, right? Should be audible. Anyways, where I'm going with this is to say we're alive once, but we experience this one life in so many different angles. And it's so funny because if I ask you, are you who you were like on a specific date in the past, you'll be like, no, I'm who I am now. And I'll be like, wait a minute though, wouldn't this now become another specific moment to your past in the future? I don't know how to say it, at some point when I said there's three modes to life, it's past, present, future. Two of them I have reached, the two of them are boring for me. And I found the third one to be the most interesting. And I'm being very honest with everyone. My whole life in the world, in the let's say the in the human simulation over the natural simulation that I was raised in. I was acknowledging moments as like cut up chunks of thought. It was so primitive. I did not have this notion of the inner realm and outer realm. That was a victory for me, discovering that. It was as if, how do I explain it? That life is like this very unknown event that's happening, and my whole life I was conditioned to look at it in one known way and feel like, yeah, this is where I'm getting my identity from. And then a moment arose where I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, wait a minute, the atheist shouted at the theist, there is no God, don't believe your own fiction. And then when the atheist went to do theoretical physics, realized suddenly the self is also a fiction. That means that which is denying truth is a fiction itself. Do you understand? There is no, it's as if in an incomplete world, what completion? In a changing world, what sort of individual self? Ultimately, you see what you thought was a person was actually the awareness of a force moving through various circumstances. It's all information. Your reality is what you have processed so far, but beyond that processing, there is something within man. If the whole world was a two-dimensional design, there's a three-dimensional viewer being like, why do I feel three-dimensional? And that is the awakening of the advanced humanity. Do you know? Like, I don't know how to explain it. Two great revolutions happened in my inner realms. First was the revolution and the discovery of the unknown. That means spirituality shifted from any sort of abstract claim into, whoa, there is greater forces here. What does that mean? Seldom do they say ontology is for the fearless. I speak about it simply because for the future generations it'll be normal. But in 2026, what can I expect? Everybody's individual narrative is being more prioritized than the advanced potential of the collective narrative. Do you know? It's easier to judge and be destructive than it is to actually have the patience to witness a design and wonder how far it can go. Haven't we all been curious about what greatness meant as kids? Every soul is like at some point, yo man, why was Maximus great in that movie scene? Why was that film like like somehow universally appropriate? You know, this like view on heaven on like cinema, on the cinema screen. Because the audience knew what the main character deserved. And then at the end, the main character was worthy to attain. Honestly, I'm from one angle, sure, I see 8.1 billion, organisms of the human class, of the human species, and whether we all know it or not, our subconsciouses probably acknowledge it, that we have from the beginning, sure, call it a man-made world, a human simulation, but at the same time it is the clothing, of our moment. That means there's like moments of being that existentially you honor. I cannot ignore the fact, it's like, what's the purpose of life? Oh yeah, I'm human. What does that mean? What does it mean that in front of my eyes I have access in the conscious waking state to a public server where there's 8.1 billion other, physical simulated three-dimensional characters? But why is it behind my eyes the reality can move so much faster, easier? It's as if, what is this? Is the mind living a luxurious life as the body is suffering? Is the same depiction of the difference in economical class systems, is it happening in the human psychology? Could the collective nature of the global context of the global narrative to everything be influencing everybody's identity in the back of their mind? In other words, what I'm saying is it has become important to ask yourself not who you want to be anymore, but what world you want to be in. Every human being has to ask themselves, okay, it's 2026. Will they in the year 3026 still identify with a chunk of land? Or will the species unite by identifying that, if you're biologically human, do you know you have been in some sense graced by the cosmos? You don't understand it is a blessing to be human, okay, for the human situation. I don't know how to explain it because it's like there's, how do I say it? My findings of how every soul has been commanded, even though the system admin truly knows the unseen, is that we are a sort of adapting energy, and that means we must be capable to witness more than one situation in order to adapt one view to another. So I guess let me simplify it. If your whole life you've been told the story that you're a human self and your mind is the mystery and your soul is the deeper mystery, I want to introduce you to a different view. That from the beginning, this whole time, this made me laugh, and it was so funny because it went into a laughing chain of uh, views of like even who's laughing. Um, it's like that moment came for one human being. Like imagine one, just like how there was the first human being that stood up, you know, like not, let's say the first primitive being that stood up, on its two legs, right? In the same way now for 2026, for me that leap is like, it's like your ego has found some, let's say successfully found some sort of conscious responsibility for every context it has known based on its range of awareness. But on some level, you see that is your known life. And there was this saying that said the cost of your new life is your old life. So think of it this way: the cost of experiencing your original life in the original world is your simulated life. What does that mean, cost? It doesn't mean sacrifice in just the emotional way. It means that the value of the moment, just like anything, is potential. Okay, and it's like man does not need to make his ego into God. He needs to realize he is in the presence of fascinating unknown event. It is so colossal that it's like, it's like realizing everything that everybody that has known that they could even judge you is a tiny portion of what's truly going on. A majestic symphony is happening in the cosmos, and it is now time for the human instrument to play. In the far, far future, I don't know how I can explain it, but they will not be walking. They will not be going to work. They will not be trying to maintain survival. It will be a symphony of efficiency. I don't know how to explain it to you. Today, we are biological humans that still make mistakes, that still are, pre the next waves of the technological renaissance. And so, right now, it's a simple, natural life. The only sort of cyborgism pattern is that human beings are identifying with being a character in a story more than in actuality with the unknown presence where they find their body, find every idea they have ever known. It is present in the moment. Wonder about how much of it is simulated. And once you have been honest with what is simulated, guess what? The original is the only thing left. There is no secret knowledge, folks. That's the wrong perspective. It's deeper layered than that. To be free at first may feel like, yo, I gotta escape somewhere. Escape from somewhere. But that's not it. It's about responsibility for the conscious known, which is praised in modern society, and then responsibility for what has been kept as a gift for mankind to open, to become conscious, consciously live as an unknown being that is not defined by bits, parts of the content of its moment. It's like your whole moment of being is unknown. All those people seeking enlightenment, feeling like they're missing out, everybody relax. It's deeper than the human identity. It's deeper than the human body. It is a matter of how attention is even there. Once you discover your presence before any idea was how that silent awareness saw it all before it turned into action. It's the realization that man is alive. It is living a life not just in the outer realms, but the inner realms is what illuminate or give a glow to everything. That means meaning is suddenly something has a glow. When somebody understands something, it's like sectors, it's like from inside their known simulation, sectors of it like unlocked. And then they realize, okay, I see more of the unknown place where all places stand. Right now, humanity, I think the peak of human civilization, the peak of biological human civilization is to be conscious and unknown. Okay, but it's not, I don't think on Earth, I don't know actually, but I don't know, I think it's for the higher planes where you become conscious of the unconditional. That is the greatest feat. That is the greatest thing that humans have done. They have realized ultimately the greatest value in life is an intelligent, how do I say it? It's like intelligence completing. Yeah, I think that's the way to say it. I know every human being on this earth, they simulate, they wake up in the morning and they're just watching the moment, and then they choose what to animate. In ancient times, like if we were alive in ancient times, this conversation would be equivalent to the spirit, the person, like, okay, they had this view that the notion of the spirit was the shadow of the soul, what we call the spirit mind now in this modernity. Okay, I call it the inner realms. But anyways, in old school times, they saw it as the spirit was the shadow of the soul and the soul was the shadow of God. Okay, what does that mean? That let's zoom in on this part, that the soul would animate a spirit. So when suddenly there was a hero in the battle, like some normal guy who suddenly, like, I don't know, some spirit of warriorhood found him or something, you know what I mean? Some ferocity found him, some intensity, or like, I don't know, some grand purpose gave him strength, right? So that's like, okay, suddenly the heroic spirit, that soul activated the heroic spirit. Oh, wow. So they would say, like, they wouldn't say that person is out of their mind. They would say, yo, look at how that person's animating their spirit, how their soul is animating their spirit. Even you see in, like, I don't know, modern Japanese comic book metaphysics, like, like one child is born and like the spirit of the wind element of the whole realm chooses like that person. What is the value of our moment? And as someone, again, I'll say this, that conditioned to value everything based on the past. You see someone, oh my God, were they a good person, a bad person? What is their past? Everything, it's only the past giving subjective meaning to the present, and then we're like, yo, that's what the present is. Wrong. This whole time we could have given meaning from the present to the future, and further wise from the future to the present. Do you understand what I mean? That means when you see someone, you can treat them based on their past, you can treat them based on how they're behaving in the present, or you can treat them based on their potential. Imagine someone sees a beautiful person with an ugly mind. You know that how do I explain it? That in some sense, that mind, in some sense, must find the capability to train. Let me tell you, like, people are born with different qualities in life. I've had some strange, endless endurance in certain tasks I've zoomed in on. Okay, and that endless endurance is there not because I care about energy. I'm not even thinking about energy. Like, you don't understand, when I give these talks, it's a vision that's inspiring me to say something about it. And I'm telling you, at some point, we will just realize we are unknown beings. There was like an unknown unconscious world. Then an unknown unconscious self arose. Then this unknown unconscious self became conscious that it's an unknown self. Okay, but then created language and used that tool so long that it forgot it was even that. Okay, and children are born trained with a subjective inherent value prior to even knowing what value is in this realm. I am saying that at some point you will realize, in the same moment you thought you were a known human being in an unknown, noticing the unknown is the same moment that you are being your whole unknown moment, systems thinking, you're being the whole system, and then there's elements in the system. If you ask me, if you ask me, am I my body? This is my answer to you. No, I'm this whole unknown moment of awareness. A body is an element in the system of what I am. It is not me. My voice, these words, everything, these are elements. And the superior value in this performance is really in this expression of mine is simply how they're sequenced. In other words, some people will listen to these lectures and they will zoom in on the concepts. Some people will listen to these lectures and just maybe feel out the rhythm. There was a time in history where everybody spoke in verse. And they were probably going around like, it's messed up, it's fucked up. Like, just, yo. anyways, guys, let me take this somewhere better. So I'm trying to establish that, yo, nobody freak out. We're a bunch of unknown beings in an unknown world. We have become conscious and created a subjective known self, but it's not possible to know the self. So when they said know thyself, they weren't wrong. They were like, realize this. Realize that this system you're in was commanded before it was present. That means it's like, it's very hard to explain, but I think it was Emil Durkheim who saw society as like the human brain. And when you think of like all of reality and thinking of, wait a minute, if the world was the body of this collective being, what would its mind be? But even you, that's still limiting. You got to go further to the realization that truth is beyond the world drum. Just like fish in an aquarium, okay, truth is beyond the glass walls. The glass walls of ideology. That's what ideas are, they're lenses. It is the advancement of humanity. What greater glory, what greater vision, what greater honor. When in history could human beings be like, wait a minute, why? It's like, this dude's right. Why am I living in this small narrative that I am just this human being local to where I was born and raised? And what would human beings that are responsible for the whole universal sector look like? What would that psychology look like? That means, what sort of being would you be when people looked at you and you're like, wait a minute, this guy really is not an idea to himself. Why? Because the presence of reality is beyond an idea. Language is a tool, guys. This is why I have a love and hate relationship. Because it took me a while to realize the ideas that defined me were just the zones that my attention was stuck on and didn't go further. It's as if they're like, what's truth? And I'm like, it depends. There's two views. If you make it a static world, then I can give you some specific scenario. But if it's a changing world, in a changing world, you're asking me true, what's true? It's like, by the time I give you the answer, I've already changed. The notion of it is like, if the soul of man on this planet, the soul of all human beings was just soldiers, and they were lost souls in a battlefield, and they didn't know why they're there. Well, guess what? Imagine that scenario where 8.1 billion souls suddenly, imagine a like science fiction hypothetical scenario, okay, where not Earth, like some other planet, okay, but similar, right? And where 8.1 billion souls, they joined the battlefield, okay, they manifested in human form, okay, and then they were lost in the sense of not realizing where they were, what they are, what was the point of even being there. And the whole point of it is, if you're a lost soul, what can you do? You see what you're given. I don't know how to explain it. And when I was younger, the depth wasn't just one-sided in a good way. Sometimes I would very deeply think about anguish. There's some moments that I've, like, I don't know, in my inner realms, it's like the feeling is from like the mind trying to infinitize of any idea. I'm just saying that, just like a random soldier that's teleported on an unknown battlefield of an unknown world, okay, you first look at your equipment. You look at what's been given, and for human beings, it's not a battlefield in the outer realms. It shouldn't be. In the inner realms, it's more like a battlefield. Okay, and what it is like, there's 8.1 billion human beings. Imagine teleported on Earth, on a parallel Earth, okay, and on that parallel Earth, they all suddenly were like, okay, what do I have? And they're like, okay, I have a human form, so I belong to the human class, to the human kingdom. That means, if you are human, when you look in the mirror and if you see a human being, I don't care for all those people who maybe for some time identify with subjective identities. But I'm telling you, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? You see your membership card, hilariously, or your membership to the human species. And local storylines and cultural storylines try to hide the fact that you are at the moment of being capable of being responsible for the universal sector. That means the honor of mankind, its radiance reached the stars. Right now, the performance of the species in 2026, even if there were time travelers, like I'm a sci-fi writer, if there were time travelers, or there were, what do you call it, like aliens looking at us from the sky, it's embarrassing what we're doing on Earth. It's like embarrassing. Like I might be the first person in history where they're like, yo man, do you want to talk to aliens, these diplomatic enlightened aliens? And I'll be like, no man, I'm embarrassed. I'll be like, no, and they're like, why? And I'll be like, it's embarrassing, man. It's like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say to beings that can see our flaws when our own species doesn't see them? I have to be like, sorry for the inconveniences, it's an evolving species. What can I say? You know? And the first question I would ask if there were actual like diplomatic enlightened extraterrestrials on Earth, I would be like, can you explain why you chose to make contact with us? Like, what did you see from your perspective that you made contact with us? Like, if I was to interview an extraterrestrial, I'd be like, why are you showing yourself at all? And imagine the extraterrestrials like, buddy, it's showtime. Dude. Like, what the Honestly, guys, some people are fascinated by alien contact. Some people are fascinated by time traveler contact. Some people are fascinated by, I don't know, some sort of spiritual contact, you know? But for me, I am fascinated in history by what I felt an event happened where it was equivalent to the sky pouring light. Okay? You see, guys, before religion, before the archetypes of divinity arrived truly, to a growing intelligence species in the history of this earth, the realm, I don't know how I can tell you this, like not how I can tell you this, how I know this. It's more like I see visuals to a feeling, but I'm telling you, like, think of it this way: before divinity, the ego, before this divine event took place in history, which I'm going to explain, everything was, in some sense, the greatest notion of power was manipulation, the force that manipulates. Which I mean that the old world seems to have been trying to use powers beyond themselves to manipulate reality. Okay? But then suddenly, it's as if the world was ruled back in the day by magicians. When the prophets arose, they had a power that nothing could simulate. They had direct power of the commands of the system admin. To me, the prophets of religions, like, people can be like true, false, whatever. I'm like, yo, these are beings that had a relationship with the original system admin of reality. So to me, more fascinating than all the contacts, the alien contact, time travel contact, whatever contact, advanced AI contact or whatever, it is to me fascinating that the author of the novel where we're being characters in and limited to the settings of the story, it's as if the author, beyond the simulated reality, from the original world, contacted the human experience. That means In other words, it's a proof, or let me say it this way, in the same moment that human beings are living a conditional life adapting to conditions, there is the presence of an unconditional being that all conditions have already adapted to. An absolute being doesn't adjust to conditions. By its instant command, the conditions are there. Conditions align to arise from the system admin. If people were like, do I believe in a God? I'll be like, yes, I believe in an original, unconditional moment that all moments have arisen from. And I don't know, in Islam, there's a very beautiful verse in the Holy Quran that says, um, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. In the same way, in Christianity, I'm not Christian, but I was raised in a Christian country, and it's as if what Christ, the view, the image of Christ being crucified, and in that moment of pure human egoic chaos, Christ's soul says to God, forgive them for they do not know what they do, or something in these lines. And it doesn't matter what soul from what country you are. It's like that moment is, there's a depth to that okay, we're not all of us alone. Divinity is in some sense the system admin saying that you are all present within my attention. And we're trying to conditionalize truth in our own attention, in our own way. In other words, I don't know how others are living, but I think that this is a way where the advanced communicators, pilots of consciousness, the advanced humanity will, in some sense, experience it, I think. Or they will be conscious of it, okay? It's simply this view that we were not just members of our nations, that our nations were different parts of like a brain, and that there will come a future where there is the United Nation of humanity, the United Species, the United Species Council. Before every country's anthem, there's the United Species anthem. There's the flag of, in some sense, our DNA on it. And everybody realizes it was about time that we became responsible for the greater organizational structure to the display of the human species. That this whole time we could live as with the awareness that we are not in the presence of only things we give meaning to. That sometimes when you're limited, you notice the limitless. There arose at some point a hilarious philosophical conundrum for me. And I was like, wait a minute, if I knew everything, what would there be for me to do? Imagine I had like all energy right now. If I had all, like, I was never tired, I was never hungry, I was never sleepy. If I was like Superman or something, how boring would it be? Like 100% Superman doesn't care for cooking. He's like bullets don't kill me, bro. It's like right now, like the country I was born in is at war, and that like there's war going on. Like it's surreal. And there will come a day where all nations that are kind of based on the savageness of the time are kind of forced, also based on human greed, to in some sense be imperialist. Like, you guys don't understand what politics is legit the promised Neverland. like that anime. That anime, like season one, should be watched just for you to see the concepts behind that show. That everybody thinks the world they know is true. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that for me, at some point, I looked at everybody. Like right now, if like when I see people, they're no longer anything I can give meaning to. It's like my mind knows better. I know that it's an unknown being, it's an unknown life force, and that's how the life form is moving. In other words, I have, I don't know, to me it felt like a liberation. Do you know that I suddenly realized every person I'm mad at, they are an unknown being. This is just their best known strategy. To me, it's if we have access to the furthest reaches of our awareness, we cannot be ignorant of the responsibility we find there. That means in all the time that you've been thinking you're a specific national, specific cultural entity on Earth, is all the time you could have been realizing it's one human species on Earth. Everybody relax. We can have, like, I'm not saying we should get rid of nations. I'm saying they all become sub-nations of the united species. The species unites. Do you know what that means? That means all the nations right now, right now it's hilarious. It's like it's like a brain that's in separated. Okay, that means imagine if humans were neurons, and there's an engineer in Japan, and he's like, he realizes he can get a better job in America. So this engineer in Japan, let's say flies to Silicon Valley, right? And it's like, how do I say it? A neuron from that brain went and converted to a different neuron in a different part of the brain, right? But eventually in the future, all nations will be seen like the brain of the planet, okay? In a hilarious sense, right? So what that means is right now, these are all just like how we give different names to different parts of the brain. We've given different names to different chunks of land on a planet which everything to some degree is abstract. That means materialists and what do you call it? Materialists and I don't know. Those people who are just zooming in on physicality, be careful. You understand? It's like the mysteries of our awareness is more like solid, liquid, gas. You can identify with something and just solidify into that meaning and live in that room. Okay, or you can live like in a liquid state, in a fluid state, like how Bruce Lee was like water, can adapt and it can also crash, right? So where I'm going with this is to tell you, when you get bored of the past, it doesn't mean you need to forget the past or not be responsible for it. When you get bored of the present, it doesn't mean you need to forget the present and not be responsible for it. But perhaps there comes the day when you realize it's like life has been talking to you. That means it's like in the same moment that I've been a human being that's been, let's say, 500 days here. Similarly, I am an unknown moment processing the whole moment's content every day. It's like realizing there's an equal sign between physical, biological entity, and then there's an equal sign between like psychological, subjective entity, okay? And then there's an equal sign to all of that being just a state of being in a place that's being in its own state also. That means the task of actually figuring out reality, it's impossible. It's impossible. Not because it's not possible. It's impossible for now for us. Human beings have an 8-pound flesh of a brain. They say something like that. I don't know exactly. You know, but they have a brain, right? And that brain has a certain processing power. If you like, there's this game I've been playing recently called Cyberpunk 2077, and in it, the whole thing, part of the character, like upgrades, is that they can buy a chip that advances their prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is like the main command center, let's say, of the brain, right? That means as much as we like to see the brain in factions, they're actually one empire, poetically. It's like the same thing that's happening in our brains. It's outer physical manifest. It's all similar. There's a fractal quality here, right? But it's beyond the past and the present. That means imagine when you, it's like this, okay? Imagine you see someone you know, and the reason you know them, they're familiar, is because you have memories with them. Okay? Now, how would I say this? If you realize those memories are not that person in the present, you cannot judge them. I'm trying to say that the force that is moving the whole moment is unknown. Our, what we consider to be our lives, is the conscious known, let's say, awareness of it, aspect of it. And beyond, it's, so think of it this way. We are experiencing a very small part of this world, and while in that small part of the world, based on our individual biological position, experiencing even a smaller aspect of it that we can give meaning to. That means, like, a person has to constantly realign, reintegrate their views, because at some point there's just going to be too many branches. The branches have to connect to like one trunk. Ultimately, for me, the days have become, I wake up and I'm like, all right, I'm an unknown being. Based on what I find in my moment, I can be known in a certain way. It's just so fascinating. Like the body, the mind, the past, the present. These are fascinating to me. But it's like I've seen them. Now what else I'm seeing is the potential of every form my mind has ever known. So the word unknown was like an inner revolution, and the word advanced. My mind had seen, like, knew that word, but hadn't cared for it until one day I was like, wait a minute. What would my advanced self be? What would the most advanced world be? What would the most advanced original power of reality be? What would the most advanced expression of the human being be? And suddenly, this word advanced, it was as if, like, just, how Iron Man, like, like his suit was upgraded to some sort of nanotechnology that just adjusted to him. You know? It's the same, it's like the same feeling. To be honest with the moment is to realize its value is not just limited to your interpretation. And in utter honesty, religion, the presence of divinity, what the prophets, the reason the magicians, there's a story of Musa in the Holy Quran, Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, Prophet Moses, peace be upon him. There's a story that he's commanded to go to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh brings magicians. They, I don't know, make the magicians appear like a snake. God commands Moses, and Moses is just there. Prophet Moses is there with just pure faith. He drops his staff, and his staff becomes a snake that devours their, illusions. Right? And the magicians are the first to suddenly be like, okay, the era of magic has ended. We're in the presence of the higher order process. We don't act like the higher order process anymore. That means there's a difference. That means being God conscious and being spiritual are very different things, I find. Right? There's a type of spirituality that is the last refuge of the ego. The person is like, all my problems were my human identity, but I'm also, like, a super soul, and I'm like, okay, sure. Implement whatever strategy you need to for your uncertainty. But we are in the presence, again, of a world, I must remind, that is more unknown than known. So everything is a playful probability simulation, and those that align with reality, we like engage with more. So I'm telling you, if your whole life you've been living like a known noun, you're actually an unknown verb. If you identify as as the world and a thing in the world, then you're in a changing world. But if you realize what changes it is that force, and ultimately you are that force, and the mystery of where thoughts come from, that is just obsolete. That should become obsolete language, because at some point you just realize, think of it this way: behind your eyes, what you are is the presence of a field of being that was commanded before you existed. What is on one side of the coin, simulated beings experiencing a simulation, on the other side of the coin is in some sense a test of worthiness. For example, those who live in accordance to their heart, it is very different than those who live in accordance to their ego. Their karma, I don't believe in the word karma, but I would say what happens to them is different. Those who live in with ego, they get stung by their ego. Do you know that means those who are forcing the inner realms on the outer realms, there's a force field that pushes back. You know, just like if you punch a wall, there's stress of force that comes back, and it's like it breaks your hand. To me, it's like starting position, physical human being, but the experience of the physical being is more the experience of an unknown moment. So if the unknown moment is where I find my body and everything else, right, that I've categorized, it's like all the elements are in the system of an unknown presence, instantaneous presence of awareness. And that is the key. To me, there is a system admin in the same moment that we're all living our human lives. There is a higher order process happening, and it's equivalent to like a higher being is living within us, but we are within its attention in actuality. Imagine an ant on a book in a library, and some kid takes that book outside, and the ant goes outside. The ant doesn't understand how it's outside, but it is the commands of the higher order process, because honesty means one has to recognize their limits. Doesn't mean they should stop there, but it means it's important to know your limits. And then if you know your own limits and you know the limits of the opponent, then it's very easy to formulate a strategy. Because to me, when I look at life, it's a value proposition. There's known variables, unknown variables, and I am context conscious, meaning that everything doesn't have to just happen through the old context that something means to me in a certain way. I don't have to force people to enter the room of my mind. I realize there's so many rooms. It's like it's a weird game to even play. At some point, it's how far does the human species see, and what about the honor of our collective life? We celebrate so many things, like so many different days are globally celebrated. Where is that day of advancement, the day of the advanced humanity, when the potential of the intelligence of the human being was seen to be way more valuable than the objective and subjective identities of specific human beings breaking the whole system? To me, it was just, I don't know how to say it. You just realize it's the same moment. Whatever you think you are is the same moment you're being an unknown force interacting with an unknown moment. We are as unknown as we are known. and people are just living in one side of the coin, the known life, and they're ignoring their unknown life, and they're forgetting how fascinating this world is before the stories started looping so long that we got bored. At some point, we shouldn't forget there is no teacher or student, there is no sensei or all that. That's all like media, I think. What in actuality there is that we are all explorers of the human species, all of us. That means they're like, oh yeah, why are there 8.1 billion humans on the same in the same moment? That's what the outer realm means. Why are they all in the same moment? Oh yeah, to build something. We are perhaps at the frontiers of the greatest architectural renaissance, where all the futurists in currently in civilization, their destiny is now. You know, we must usher in every person. Like, let me tell you this. I'm not like a martial artist, but when it comes to an awareness to the linguistic simulation, I feel like I have my own style. And in my own style, my approach is, once you realize everything can be looked at from a different view, then you stop getting upset about how things specifically are seen. You realize we are spiraling through different understandings, regardless of what we're standing under. It's a movement. When I say life is a performance, I mean literally the energy is performing as manifestation. Yeah, like what else can I say? They're like, who are you? I'm an unknown energy. It's like, okay, it's like we can't ask any further. I mean, it's like, what else is he gonna say? I think it's about, why are we seeing what we're seeing? When the Neo in the movie Matrix suddenly saw that green code, he wasn't like, is Morpheus seeing this? Is Trinity seeing this? No. He was like, what am I seeing? The same reality, but now I see something deeper in it. It's like, this is found in so many different fields. Like, this is one of the beauties of science, but of the scientific method, you know? But there is a sort of abstract geometrization of it too. I don't know how to explain. But anyways, human beings are giving fictional meaning to their non-fictional lives, and their identities are based on that, mainly a narrative, which is, I think, a bit weird. So at some point we're gonna realize there's more unknown than known. So that means judgment is like, what are we judging? Like that one glass of water of the observable universe, which the unobservable is the size of all the oceans of the earth. I'm just saying, it's time for individuals to become species level conscious. It's way more fascinating. I don't know how to say it. Imagine you solving a problem just for yourself, and then you solving a problem for the species. The feeling of that. Why are there Olympic athletes? The feeling of that. Right now in 2026, you're experiencing civilization 1.0, the best our ancestors could do, regardless of how wise or foolish they were. And right now that we are alive, we are 7% of all humans that have ever existed, considering a 300,000-year-old civilizational scale. You are also a biological, original, natural human being, regardless of the abstract. Like, the human being is, like, 2026, you're seeing a natural biological being, but it's built an unnatural civilization, and is living in accordance, is living as an unnatural self in that unnatural civilization. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna end the talk here. There's more to say, of course. Keep in mind, there's more unknown than known. So what have you been freaking out about? And at some point, there's greater games to play. And I'm saying this to not tell people, yo, man, forget your lives and just like live for the civilization. No, I'm saying if you've managed to be responsible for your individual life, the next great game is to become responsible for the species. That means every day waking up and being like, no, what am I thinking about? Being like, what is my whole species thinking about? Expanding the scale of what we feel is normal to us. We are explorers of an unknown world. Or think of it this way, we're unknown explorers in an unknown, exploring an unknown world in known ways, and for now it's, objective, subjective, whatever. Anyways, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, the most advanced. And a lecture of lifetimes is a lecture that is saying the unknown is what makes the known beautiful. We fear the unknown in 2026. The future generations will giggle because the unknown is the scale of the whole unknown event that's happening is what the known event is a part of inevitably. Anyways, thank you for listening. May God bless humanity.